Some war machines are built for a single conflict, a single doctrine, a single moment in history. Others refuse to disappear. Decades pass. Technologies evolve. Generations of soldiers rotate in and out of service. Yet certain machines remain, not as relics, not as museum pieces, but as functioning instruments of military power. How does a bomber designed in the early Cold War still patrol modern skies? Why does a piston-engine transport from World War II continue flying missions long after the jet age transformed aviation? And how can armored vehicles conceived in an entirely different geopolitical era still roll beneath contemporary flags? Longevity in warfare is rarely accidental. It is engineered, modified, and sometimes reluctantly accepted by militaries that discover replacement is harder than expected. These are not simply survivors of history. They are machines that adapted to it. The question is not just how they endured, but why they were never truly replaced. Douglas C-47, Skytrain, the World War II, transport that refuses to retire. When the Douglas C-47 Skytrain entered military service in 1941, it was engineered as a durable logistical platform capable of sustaining large-scale warfare across multiple continents. Derived from the civilian DC-3, the C-47 incorporated structural reinforcements throughout the fuselage, a strengthened cargo floor designed to handle vehicles and artillery pieces, wide double cargo doors for rapid loading, and anchor points for static line paratrooper operations. Its development emphasized mechanical reliability, maintainability in field conditions, and operational flexibility rather than speed or heavy defensive armament. During the Second World War, the C-47 became central to Allied mobility. It deployed airborne troops over Normandy on D-Day, resupplied forces during Operation Market Garden, and operated the hazardous Hump airlift route between India and China. In the Pacific, it linked isolated island garrisons across thousands of miles of ocean, reducing reliance on vulnerable naval supply lines. Powered by twin Pratt and Whitney radial engines, the aircraft delivered consistent performance even under maximum payload conditions, and its stable flight characteristics allowed it to operate from short, improvised, or damaged airstrips close to combat zones. Production exceeded 10,000 aircraft, ensuring widespread distribution among Allied air forces. After 1945, the C-47 did not disappear from military inventories. It transitioned into post-war service in Korea and Vietnam, where it supported transport, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare missions. Some variants were converted into the AC-47 gunship configuration, demonstrating the adaptability of the airframe in evolving combat environments. Modern refurbishment programs have upgraded avionics, navigation systems, and structural components, extending operational life well beyond original expectations. Today, upgraded C-47 derivatives remain in limited service roles worldwide, particularly in transport and specialized support functions. More than 80 years after its introduction, the Skytrain remains a rare example of a large wartime machine whose service life spans generations of conflict, defined by endurance rather than obsolescence. Antonov AN-2, the Cold War biplane that outlived generations. When the Antonov AN-2 first flew in 1947, aviation was already racing toward jet propulsion and supersonic ambition. Yet, this aircraft deliberately embraced an older philosophy. It was a large, single-engine biplane, constructed with fabric-covered control surfaces and powered by a radial piston engine. In an era increasingly defined by speed and altitude records, the AN-2 prioritized lift, stability, and rugged endurance. What appeared technologically outdated became its defining operational advantage. Designed to serve the vast and underdeveloped territories of the Soviet Union, the AN-2 was engineered for extreme practicality. Its high-lift wing configuration, automatic leading-edge slats, and robust landing gear allowed takeoffs and landings from short, uneven, or improvised airstrips. The aircraft could transport troops, light vehicles, agricultural equipment, medical supplies, and cargo into remote regions inaccessible to larger transports. Within military structures, it operated as a liaison aircraft, paratroop trainer, light cargo hauler, and observation platform, often working in austere environments where advanced infrastructure was non-existent. The An-2's mechanical simplicity became central to its longevity. Maintenance crews could service it with basic tools, and its radial engine tolerated harsh climates ranging from Arctic cold to desert heat. Unlike jets requiring complex supply chains and specialized facilities, the An-2 functioned reliably in isolated bases with minimal support. That durability encouraged licensed production outside the Soviet Union, expanding its presence across multiple countries and decades of shifting political landscapes. Decades after its introduction, the aircraft remains in limited military and paramilitary roles. Modern upgrades, including avionics improvements and occasional turboprop conversions, have extended operational viability while preserving its fundamental airframe design. More than 75 years after its maiden flight, the Antonov An-2 stands as an enduring Cold War machine whose survival reflects structural resilience, adaptability, and a design philosophy centered on reliability over technological fashion, proving that utility can outlast innovation. T-34 Tank. The Soviet armor that survived the 1940s. When the T-34 entered service in 1940, it represented a radical shift in armored warfare design, combining sloped armor, a powerful diesel engine, and wide tracks suited for harsh terrain. The T-34 balanced mobility, protection, and firepower in a way few contemporaries could match. At a time when many tanks sacrificed one attribute for another, the T-34 delivered a practical synthesis that reshaped battlefield expectations. During World War II, the tank became the backbone of Soviet armored forces. It proved particularly decisive on the Eastern Front, where its wide tracks allowed it to maneuver effectively through mud and snow that immobilized narrower vehicles. Early models mounted a 76.2mm gun, later upgraded to the more powerful 85mm variant, enabling it to confront increasingly advanced German armor. Its sloped armor design increased effective thickness without excessive weight, deflecting incoming rounds more effectively than flat plating. Beyond its battlefield performance, the T-34's true strength lay in production efficiency. Soviet industry simplified manufacturing processes to allow rapid assembly in relocated factories east of the Ural Mountains. Tens of thousands were built, ensuring numerical superiority during critical phases of the war. Mechanical simplicity made field repairs possible even under extreme conditions, allowing damaged vehicles to return to action quickly. After 1945, the T-34 did not disappear from military inventories. It saw combat in Korea, the Middle East, and various post-war regional conflicts. For decades, it remained in reserve stocks or secondary service roles across multiple nations aligned with the Soviet Union. While modern main battle tanks eventually replaced it, some countries retained limited numbers for training or reserve purposes. More than 80 years after its introduction, the T-34 stands as one of the most influential armored vehicles ever constructed. Its combination of durability, mass production, and adaptable design ensured survival far beyond the 1940s, embedding it permanently in military history. M4 Sherman, the Allied tank that never fully disappeared. When the M4 Sherman entered production in 1942, it was not designed to be the most heavily armored or most powerful tank on the battlefield. Instead, it was engineered for balance, reliability, and mass production. The United States needed an armored vehicle that could be built quickly, transported across oceans, and maintained under diverse combat conditions. The Sherman answered that requirement with mechanical simplicity and industrial scalability. Powered by multiple engine variants depending on production batch, the Sherman featured a fully rotating turret and a 75mm main gun in its early versions, later upgraded to a 76mm high-velocity gun to improve anti-armor performance. Its vertical volute suspension system provided stable mobility over uneven terrain, and its design allowed relatively straightforward repairs in field workshops. While it faced criticism for armor thickness compared to some German heavy tanks, the Sherman compensated with numerical superiority and coordinated combined arms tactics. The tank fought across multiple theaters during World War II, including North Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. Allied forces relied on it not only for armored engagements but also for infantry support and rapid exploitation of breakthroughs. Its logistical advantages were critical. Spare parts, ammunition, and replacement vehicles were widely available, ensuring sustained operational tempo. After the war, the Sherman did not vanish from global arsenals. Surplus vehicles were transferred to Allied nations and remained in service in regional conflicts throughout the mid-20th century. Some countries modernized their Shermans with upgraded engines, improved guns, and revised suspension systems, extending their operational life well beyond the 1940s. Although eventually replaced by more advanced main battle tanks, the M4 Sherman's global distribution and adaptability allowed it to persist for decades. Its legacy lies not only in wartime production numbers, but also in its prolonged presence across post-war battlefields, where upgraded variants continued operating long after their original designers expected retirement. Supermarine Spitfire, the fighter that still takes to the skies. When the Supermarine Spitfire first flew in 1936, it introduced a design that would become synonymous with aerial defense and national survival. Its elliptical wing, advanced for its time, reduced drag while maintaining structural strength, giving the aircraft exceptional maneuverability and speed. Powered initially by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Spitfire combined aerodynamic efficiency with mechanical reliability, creating a fighter capable of meeting rapidly evolving threats. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, the Spitfire played a decisive role in countering German Luftwaffe raids. While the Hawker Hurricane bore much of the numerical burden, the Spitfire's superior performance allowed it to engage enemy fighters on more equal terms. Continuous development produced numerous variants with upgraded engines, armament configurations, and strengthened airframes. Later models incorporated the more powerful Griffin engine, increasing speed and climb rate to keep pace with advancing enemy aircraft. The Spitfire served in multiple theaters beyond Britain, including North Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Pacific. It operated from improvised airstrips and aircraft carriers, adapting to different climates and combat conditions. Its versatility extended to reconnaissance roles where stripped-down versions carried cameras instead of heavy armament, exploiting high-altitude performance for intelligence gathering. After World War II, the Spitfire remained in service with several air forces during the late 1940s and early 1950s. Though eventually replaced by jet-powered fighters, a number of airworthy examples continue to operate today in military heritage flights and officially sanctioned aviation units. These aircraft are maintained to rigorous standards, preserving both structural integrity and historical authenticity. More than 85 years after its maiden flight, the Spitfire still takes to the skies. Its continued operation reflects not only careful restoration, but also the durability of its original engineering. Few piston-engine fighters have achieved such longevity, securing the Spitfire's place as one of the most enduring war machines of the 20th century. Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, the bomber that outlasted the Cold War. When the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress entered service in the mid-1950s, it was built for a singular strategic reality: nuclear deterrence in a world divided by superpower rivalry. With a wingspan stretching over 56 meters and 8 turbojet engines mounted in paired pods beneath its long-swept wings, the aircraft was engineered for intercontinental reach. It could carry massive payloads across continents without refueling, placing it at the center of early Cold War strategic planning. Originally designed to deliver nuclear weapons from high altitude, the B-52 soon adapted to evolving threats and doctrines. As surface-to-air missile systems improved, mission profiles shifted toward low-level penetration to evade radar detection. Structural robustness allowed the airframe to endure demanding flight regimes despite its size. Over time, successive upgrades modernized avionics, radar systems, and electronic countermeasures, ensuring the bomber remained relevant even as newer platforms emerged. The aircraft saw extensive conventional use during the Vietnam War, conducting large-scale bombing operations that demonstrated its payload capacity and endurance. Later conflicts, including the Gulf War and operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, showcased its flexibility as a precision strike platform. Equipped with cruise missiles and guided munitions, the B-52 transitioned from a blunt-force nuclear deterrent to a versatile, long-range strike aircraft capable of delivering both conventional and strategic payloads. Its longevity is rooted in design margin and adaptability. The large airframe provided space for continuous technological upgrades without fundamental redesign. Re-engining programs and structural refurbishments have extended service life far beyond original expectations. Despite being conceived in the early Cold War, the B-52 continues to operate as a core component of strategic air power. More than 6 decades after its introduction, the Stratofortress remains in active service. Few military aircraft have spanned such a broad arc of geopolitical change, evolving from nuclear brinkmanship to modern precision warfare while retaining its original strategic purpose. Tupolev Tu-95 Bear, the turboprop giant that still patrols continents. When the Tupolev Tu-95 first flew in 1952, it embodied a different approach to long-range bombing. While Western powers pursued turbojet propulsion, Soviet engineers selected massive turboprop engines to balance speed, range, and fuel efficiency. The result was an aircraft with 4 Kuznetsov NK-12 engines driving contra-rotating propellers, producing one of the loudest and most distinctive acoustic signatures in military aviation. Its swept wings and long fuselage were optimized for endurance rather than stealth. Designed as an intercontinental nuclear bomber, the Tu-95 could travel thousands of kilometers without refueling, allowing it to patrol Arctic routes and approach distant targets. Its payload capacity accommodated both gravity bombs and later generations of long-range cruise missiles, enabling it to function as a standoff strike platform. Over time, multiple variants emerged, including maritime reconnaissance versions and missile carriers, expanding its strategic flexibility. Throughout the Cold War, Tu-95 aircraft conducted regular patrols along NATO airspace boundaries. These missions served both as strategic signaling and crew training exercises. Despite its age, the platform proved adaptable. Upgrades improved avionics, navigation systems, and electronic warfare capabilities, ensuring compatibility with modern weapons. Structural reinforcements and refurbishment programs extended the lifespan of the airframe well beyond original projections. Unlike many Cold War bombers retired after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Tu-95 remained central to Russia's long-range aviation force. It has participated in patrol operations over the Arctic, North Atlantic, and Pacific, and has launched cruise missiles during contemporary conflicts. The aircraft's efficiency, range, and capacity for modernization have preserved its relevance. More than 70 years after its maiden flight, the Tu-95 continues to operate as a visible instrument of strategic reach. Its turboprop engines, once seen as unconventional, contributed to endurance and reliability. The Bear stands as a rare example of a Cold War bomber whose operational presence spans multiple geopolitical eras. M113 Armored Personnel Carrier, the aluminum workhorse of modern wars. When the M113 Armored Personnel Carrier entered service in 1960, it introduced a new approach to mechanized infantry mobility. Unlike earlier steel-heavy armored carriers, the M113 used a lightweight aluminum hull, reducing overall weight while maintaining ballistic protection against small arms fire and shell fragments. This design allowed greater strategic transportability and amphibious capability, making it adaptable to varied operational environments. Powered by a diesel engine in later variants, the M113 combined mechanical simplicity with battlefield durability. Its boxy profile maximized internal space, enabling it to carry a squad of infantry while providing overhead protection from artillery splinters and small arms. Wide tracks distributed weight effectively, allowing it to traverse mud, sand, and uneven terrain. The vehicle's relatively straightforward construction made field maintenance manageable, even under combat conditions. The M113 first saw extensive combat during the Vietnam War, where it operated in jungle terrain as both troop carrier and mobile fire support platform. Crews frequently modified vehicles with additional armor, gun shields, and mounted weapons to adapt to evolving threats. Its adaptability became one of its defining traits. Over time, the platform spawned numerous specialized variants, including command vehicles, mortar carriers, ambulance configurations, and air defense systems. Beyond Vietnam, the M113 served in conflicts across the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. Its widespread export ensured adoption by dozens of armed forces, many of which modernized their fleets with upgraded engines, improved armor packages, and enhanced communication systems. Although newer infantry fighting vehicles have gradually replaced it in frontline roles, the M113 continues to serve in reserve, support, and secondary capacities in many militaries. More than 6 decades after its introduction, the M113 remains one of the most produced armored vehicles in history. Its longevity reflects a design philosophy centered on flexibility, maintainability, and cost-effective deployment. While not the most heavily armed or technologically advanced platform, the M113 earned its reputation through sustained service across generations of modern warfare. De Havilland, Canada, DHC, 2 Beaver, the utility, aircraft that militaries still depend on. When the de Havilland, Canada, DHC-2 Beaver first flew in 1947, it was designed with a clear mission: operate reliably where larger aircraft could not. Built as a single-engine, high-wing utility aircraft, the Beaver emphasized short takeoff and landing performance, rugged construction, and mechanical simplicity. Its designers prioritized function over speed, creating an airframe capable of handling remote terrain, unpredictable weather, and minimal ground infrastructure. Powered originally by a Pratt & Whitney radial engine, the Beaver demonstrated exceptional lift characteristics and stable low-speed handling. Its high-mounted wing and large flaps allowed it to operate from rough airstrips, frozen lakes, sandbars, and improvised clearings. The aircraft could be equipped with wheels, floats, or skis, expanding operational flexibility across diverse climates. For military forces operating in remote regions, this adaptability proved invaluable. The Beaver entered service with multiple armed forces during the early Cold War period. It functioned as a liaison aircraft, light transport, reconnaissance platform, and casualty evacuation carrier. During the Korean War and later regional conflicts, it transported personnel, supplies, and equipment into forward areas where conventional runways were unavailable. Its simple systems allowed maintenance crews to perform repairs without specialized facilities, extending its operational reach. Over the decades, many Beavers underwent modernization programs. Some were converted to turboprop power plants, improving reliability and fuel efficiency while retaining the original airframe's strengths. Avionics upgrades enabled compliance with modern airspace regulations and mission requirements. Despite technological advances in aviation, the Beaver's fundamental design continued to meet specific operational needs that larger or more complex aircraft could not fulfill efficiently. More than 75 years after its introduction, the DHC-2 Beaver remains in limited military and paramilitary service worldwide. Its continued presence reflects a design rooted in practicality rather than innovation for its own sake. In environments where infrastructure is scarce and reliability is critical, the Beaver endures as a proven utility platform. USS Constitution, the 18th century warship that never left commission. When the USS Constitution was launched in 1797, the United States was a young nation seeking to secure its maritime trade routes against piracy and foreign interference. Built as one of the original 6 frigates authorized by Congress, Constitution was constructed with thick live oak hull planking that earned it the nickname Old Ironsides after cannonballs reportedly bounced from its sides during combat in the War of 1812. Designed for speed and heavy firepower relative to its class, the ship carried a formidable battery of long guns and carronades. During the War of 1812, it achieved several decisive victories against British warships, including HMS Guerriere and HMS Java. These engagements boosted American morale and demonstrated that the young Navy could challenge the world's dominant maritime power. Constitution's combination of sturdy construction and aggressive seamanship secured its place in naval history. Unlike most wooden warships of its era, Constitution was never scrapped. Over the 19th century, it served in training, patrol, and ceremonial roles, periodically undergoing restoration to preserve structural integrity. Despite technological shifts from sail to steam and from wood to steel, the vessel retained its official commissioned status in the United States Navy. Today, Constitution remains the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world. Stationed in Boston, it continues to operate as an active naval vessel with a designated crew of U.S. Navy sailors. Although it no longer participates in combat operations, it sails periodically under its own power for ceremonial events and public demonstrations. Its crew maintains naval traditions, conducts official duties, and preserves the vessel's operational heritage. More than 2 centuries after its launch, USS Constitution stands as a rare example of a war machine whose service spans generations of technological transformation. Its endurance reflects sustained preservation efforts and institutional continuity, ensuring that it remains not merely a museum artifact, but an active commissioned ship in modern naval service. HMS Victory, the historic flagship that remains a naval symbol. When the HMS Victory was launched in 1765, it represented the pinnacle of 18th century naval engineering. Built as a first-rate ship of the line for the Royal Navy, Victory carried more than 100 guns distributed across multiple decks. Constructed primarily of oak and reinforced for durability, it was designed to endure sustained cannon fire while delivering overwhelming broadsides in fleet engagements. At a time when naval power determined imperial reach, ships like Victory were instruments of national strategy. The vessel's most famous moment came during the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, when Admiral Horatio Nelson used Victory as his flagship against the combined French and Spanish fleets. The battle secured British naval dominance for decades, although Nelson himself was mortally wounded aboard the ship. Victory's role in that engagement elevated it from a warship to a symbol of maritime supremacy and sacrifice. Unlike most wooden ships of the line, Victory was not dismantled after obsolescence. As naval warfare transitioned from sail to steam and from wood to iron, the ship was preserved rather than scrapped. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, it underwent multiple restorations to maintain structural integrity. Although no longer seaworthy for combat operations, it retained official status within the Royal Navy. Today, HMS Victory remains the commissioned flagship of the First Sea Lord. Permanently docked in Portsmouth, it functions as a ceremonial and symbolic vessel, while still formally listed as an active warship. Naval personnel continue to serve aboard in designated roles, maintaining traditions and overseeing preservation efforts. The ship's survival required extensive conservation work, including hull stabilization and timber replacement, ensuring that the original structure endures despite centuries of environmental exposure. More than 250 years after its launch, HMS Victory stands as a living artifact of naval history. It no longer sails into battle. As both a preserved war machine and an institutional emblem, Victory embodies continuity across centuries of maritime transformation. Martin B-57 Canberra, the jet bomber that outlived its era. When the Martin B-57 Canberra entered U.S. service in the early 1950s, it marked a transition from piston-engine bombers to jet-powered strike aircraft. Derived from the British English Electric Canberra design, the American-built B-57 combined high-altitude performance with a relatively simple airframe layout. Twin turbojet engines mounted in streamlined nacelles provided increased speed compared to earlier bombers, while its straight-wing configuration balanced stability and payload capacity. Initially intended for tactical bombing and reconnaissance missions, the B-57 proved adaptable across multiple operational roles. Early variants focused on conventional strike capability, carrying bombs internally to reduce drag. Later modifications introduced enhanced avionics, radar systems, and electronic warfare equipment. Some versions were optimized for night intruder missions, exploiting speed and altitude to conduct precision strikes under low visibility conditions. The aircraft saw extensive service during the Vietnam War. B-57 units conducted bombing missions, close air support, and reconnaissance flights across Southeast Asia. The platform's high-altitude capability and payload flexibility allowed it to adapt to changing mission requirements. Despite being an early-generation jet bomber, it remained operational even as more advanced aircraft entered the theater. Structural durability and upgrade potential extended its relevance beyond its initial design expectations. Over time, many B-57 airframes were retired from frontline combat roles, yet certain specialized variants continued operating in limited capacities. Some were converted for atmospheric research and high-altitude reconnaissance, while others remained in reserve inventories. The aircraft's adaptable design allowed modifications without complete structural redesign, a factor that contributed to its longevity. Although conceived in the early Cold War period, the Martin B-57 Canberra endured well beyond its intended operational lifespan. Its service history reflects a broader pattern in military aviation. Platforms designed with structural margin and upgrade potential can remain viable long after technological shifts redefine aerial warfare. Even decades after newer supersonic strike aircraft dominated military doctrine, the B-57's airframe remained useful for niche missions requiring endurance, altitude performance, and stable handling characteristics. Its continued operation underscored a recurring lesson in aerospace engineering. Longevity often depends less on speed or novelty, and more on adaptability, structural integrity, and the capacity to evolve alongside changing strategic demands.